of parliament, that's a problem. I plan on abolishing. Cause a raw, cause I best the friggin' product you all are in. And all that talking, I ain't buying what you offering. You bad as
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. And in today's bullshit, Bryan Alvarez has been getting dragged all weekend for what he said about Naomi. It took a little while for me to actually find what he said, because I didn't want to do a video without knowing exactly what he said. Because once somebody starts calling you a racist and all that kind of stuff, it becomes a touchy subject. So I decided I was going to actually look it up first, then hear it for myself, and then make a decision on whether it was any good or not. But I saw a lot of people were really, really mad about Bryan Alvarez. So I found the audio. It was on Reddit. So I'm going to play the audio. We're going to listen to it together. I'm going to respond as I hear, and then we're going to discuss it. But we're not going to go anywhere near the lipstick alley of pro wrestling to discuss what all the finger snappers think about Naomi. We're not going to do that. But let's see what Bryan Alvarez and Tom Lawler are talking about here.
Not very good at all. Shayna Baszler is good at her style, and Naomi is not good at Shayna Baszler's style. And Naomi, I know she's very, very likable, but she works like she's in the old Divas division.
Oh, okay, so that's what he said. All right, there's more to it. There's still another minute and 30 seconds or something like that. He says she works like she's in the old Divas division. I don't know what that means. I think the Divas division gets a bad rap as far as work is concerned. You know, a lot of people think, oh, this is just hair pulling and cat fighting. It was like, no, there was some real legitimate stuff going on in there. You know, there was some girls who could really do some stuff. Melina, Beth Phoenix, Michelle McCool. Not when they got to the point of, you know, the Bella twins, but there were some women in there who could actually do some stuff. There's some other ones that are on the tip of my tongue, but they were slowly but surely letting the women do a little bit more during the Divas division, especially during the later eras of Divas division. You know, with your AJ Lees and your Pages and stuff like that. They were letting them do a little bit more. But they weren't exactly the greatest in-ring workers in the world. I don't know what he means by she works and she's the old Divas division. She was in that division, if I remember correctly. She was in that division. So, I don't know. But she's also sort of one of the people who kind of led I wouldn't say, because, you know, we all know, it's mythology at this point that the Four Horsewomen kind of ushered in this new era of women's wrestling. But Naomi was on the cusp. If they had taken her a little bit more seriously, I think, earlier, maybe it would have been better off. But let's continue with what he had to say.
I mean, it's just not up to the modern standards. It's a styles clash with Shayna. I don't know why they had to go 6 minutes. The finish was clever because, as
Bryan, you mentioned that Naomi wrestles like she's in the Divas division and that it's not up to the modern standard. I must ask you, what is this modern standard you speak of? Because the current modern standard in the company that we're watching is the Queen's Crown.
No, that's not the modern standard, Tom.
All right, so Tom Lawler obviously doesn't watch WWE that often. So saying that the Queen's Crown is the modern standard, that's typical dirt sheet stuff. Look at this. It's like, no, they kept the matches short between the women who are not over. You know, so if you're not over, why are we giving you any substantial length of time? But Alvarez is talking about the Naomi match with Shayna Baszler, and I don't really remember it. But to be quite honest, Shayna Baszler and Naomi both wrestle fairly slowly, in so much as they're both, you know, up there in age. You know, Shayna Baszler is over the age of 40. She works a very ground-based style. Of course, Naomi isn't good at that. Why would she be good at catch wrestling and she's never actually done it? She's never been trained in it, and Shayna Baszler is. That's like saying Shayna Baszler is not very good at Naomi's style. She's not. Why would she be that style when she's never trained in it? Why would she be good at that? So to say that it's a clash of styles makes sense. saying that Naomi and what she can do doesn't really mesh with what Shayna Baszler can do, that's a fair assessment. That's nothing wrong with that assessment. But I think the way he framed it, which is that Naomi can't do what Shayna Baszler can do, it's like while that's true, it's also true the other way around. Shayna Baszler can't do what Naomi can do. But I don't remember this match, so I'm not going to sit here and try to defend either one of them in this situation. I'm just going to say I don't remember the match because it was probably a nothing match. Well, it's probably one of those matches on SmackDown. I don't remember it. But let's continue because I got another minute.
The modern standard would be like Becky and Charlotte and Sasha and there are
That's a high standard.
Yes, it is a high standard. And
that's not standard.
Okay, so I guess Tom Lawler is about to say it's an exception. The 4 horsewomen are an exception. And I agree with that. I do believe they are an exception. They are an exception to the business, too. I think sometimes we do take what some people believe are standards. And, Bryan Alvarez saying that, Naomi isn't on that level. I agree with that. I don't see anything wrong with that comment. To say that she's not as good as Becky or Charlotte or Sasha or Bayley or even Bianca or some of the other women, Toni Storm, I don't know. But so if she's not as good as like maybe the top 5 or 6 women, what is that worse than, I don't know what that means. Like, if you're not top 5 or 6, that doesn't mean you're the shits. It just means that there are other people that are very good. But you also take into account character. And that part of what people get into it with Becky is because of her character. Same thing with Charlotte, same thing with Sasha, same thing with Bianca. Everybody's going to have a character that is going to be able to inform their matches and, come up with different spots and stuff like that. So to say that the horsewomen are an exception, I think Tom Lawler is correct in that comment. I don't think that they are the standard. I think they are above standard. And I think so what is the standard? Would it be Liv Morgan? I don't know. Would it be Shotzi? I don't know. So we're talking complete relativity here. We're off into the weeds. Let's continue. We got another 40 seconds or so.
What? Okay, fine. Whatever, dude. Naomi is not as good as the other women at all. And it did not work in the match there with Sonya Deville. Or Sonya, whatever her name is.
No, really, I've got to ask. You think she's the worst one?
The worst women's wrestler? Roster? I don't know if I would say that Naomi is the worst women's wrestler on the roster. I'd have to look at the entire roster, though. She would be near the bottom, in my humble opinion. People are welcome to get mad at it.
I mean, I'd like.
All right, so that's essentially it. He says she's near the bottom, being one of the worst wrestlers in the company. Well, on the women's division. Now, I am not sure about that. I'm not sure. But like him, I would have to look at the entire roster because I'm sure that there are some who are worse. And since WWE went through and released quite a few people, I would say some of them she's probably gotten closer to the bottom because they also removed some good ones. If we take into account, but let's be honest. I heard a lot about the tampon girl, Gigi Dolan, when she was on the Independents. I heard how fantastic she was. I was actually shocked when I saw her in NXT and how green she seemed. And I kept that to myself because I figured she's in NXT. It didn't matter. But when she was on the Independents, all I kept hearing about is how good she was and how cool she was. And then I looked at her in NXT and I was kind of like, unlike, however, B. Priestley, who wrestles in NXT UK as Blair Davenport, where I can actually see why people say she was really good. She is good. But we have to understand that sometimes people are overly critical of WWE talent. And Naomi has been around for 10 plus years. She has not evolved in several years. She's had the same character for the last 4 or 5 years. Hasn't really added anything or taken anything away from her game. So you're looking at somebody they see Naomi and they say, okay, she's been doing the same thing forever. She hasn't really evolved. She hasn't really grown. And she's getting a little bit older, and she works a high flying style, which of course predicated on things like speed. And then of course you're talking about Bryan Alvarez, who gets in the weeds of wrestling. So you're talking about this guy who probably watches all that Stardom stuff. And those girls are not only fast but fluid. That's because they treat them like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was, he's the greatest entertainer of all time. Like, yeah, he was in a boot camp when he was 9 and forced to be this great singer and dancer. They do that to Stardom women, They get them when they're like 13 and put them in this boot camp. So by the time they're 19, they're the most fluid, technical female wrestlers in the world. Nobody does that in WWE. They're not going to, go and start picking up preteen girls and putting them in, the equivalent of the Forge in order to make them beat the hell out of their bodies. And so many of them retire before the age of 40 that, it's actually not that much of a surprise. And they don't make a lot of money in Japan. So that's really the way that they're looking at it. And I see people say that, Meltzer and all these guys hate women's wrestling, or they hate, or they're racist or whatever. That's the first thing I think of. It's like they will oversell women's wrestling in Japan. They oversell the shit out of it because a lot of it is mechanics, and they love mechanics. That's just that's just their thing. And you should know that when you're listening to these guys, is that they love talking about the mechanics of matches. They love, fast-paced, fluid matches that are not really informed with story, even though story can be there. They don't care if it's not. And they don't care if the character doesn't have a character or not. They're the kind of guys who watch New Japan from beginning to end and think that the young lions are better than, the top guys in WWE because of, look at the mechanics. And that's the kind of stuff that they do. So when you're out here trying to drag Bryan Alvarez, I'm all for fuck Bryan Alvarez. It's been that way for me for years. I'm not going to defend him, but I'm not going to say that he's a racist either. He just has shitty opinions. And I don't know if Naomi is one of the worst. I think B-Fab was worse than Naomi. I think Dana Brooke is worse than Naomi. I think that there's quite a few women in NXT who are not as good as Naomi. But then again, if you're NXT, you're green. Now, as far as women on the main roster, there's, Tamina was strikingly over earlier this year. I don't know what happened to it. This is 2021. I don't know what happened. Natalya is a good female wrestler, but I'm so sick of Natalya. They could fire her tomorrow and I'd probably throw a parade. So we're talking about a lot of different things here. And a lot of people have just decided they're going to say that Bryan Alvarez is a racist. That's the one thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to say Bryan Alvarez is a racist. He does have an odd dislike of Naomi. I do know that he talked bad about Naomi at the Royal Rumble one year. And he talked bad about Naomi a couple of other times. But it's okay to not be a fan of Naomi. I'm not a fan of Natalya. So it is what it is. You don't have to like Naomi. I don't think he says anything about Naomi that I feel is particularly unfair. I think it's unnecessarily harsh, but sometimes people need that. And so Naomi's fans, they tweeted at her about the Bryan Alvarez stuff, which you probably should never, ever, ever do, is bring it to their attention. That's the worst thing you could do. I don't see why you would do that. But here's what Naomi had to say. Hearing things like this used to really bring me down. I felt inadequate and insecure as a performer. Now I ask myself, what do they see that I don't? Work on it, continue to improve, and glow while I'm at it. It's all good. So she didn't get too upset about Bryan Alvarez's opinion of what she's doing and how she does it. I think that was a very big response from her in terms of she could have, with a wave of the finger, made Bryan Alvarez's day very, very difficult, but people was already doing that. So I'm not sure Naomi is the worst. I'm not sure she's the worst. She's certainly not the best, but she's not the worst. I think the Naomi fans do have a point. I've seen quite a few of them say Naomi isn't given the opportunities that the other women are, that Naomi's matches are usually kept pretty short, despite her being over, which is honestly, it's true. Naomi is one of the most over women on the roster, and she's always in short matches. She's never given big main event spots. She's never given 10, 15 minutes. She's never given the time of Becky, Bianca, Charlotte, etc. And it shows. In fact, she has a long time inactivity where she would go more than anyone else. Naomi goes a while without being seen, without being heard from. And she has the what's the word I'm looking for? She doesn't have solid foundation. Like last year when Naomi was supposedly teaming with Lana and they were going to do this whole thing with her and Lana, and then they kind of gave up on it. Then it was supposed to be another tag team they had with Naomi that they kind of undercut that as well. So you have something with Naomi. I do think she has some talent. She's carrying a lot at the bottom, that's for sure. In any event, I don't think what he said was particularly unfair or particularly rude or mean or whatever. So I certainly don't believe it's racist because it has nothing to do with her race. It has everything to do with he just doesn't like her style, and that's fine. I don't see what's the point in going after her, but I don't think she's the worst. I think calling her the worst is hyperbole, and everybody knows that in your podcast realms, you're talking about this kind of stuff. A lot of it is hyperbole. I think a lot of people who, I've seen people say certain similar things about Alexa Bliss. She's one of the worst wrestlers in the world. It's like, no. I mean, it's okay to be mediocre. Most wrestlers are mediocre. Very few are really good. And that's just being honest. Most women's wrestlers are absolute trash, even the Japanese ones. They might be able to do some really cool high-flying stuff. They may do hard-hitting matches, but they're absolutely boring. And every time I've tried to watch Stardom, I've fallen asleep. And that's not, that's just kind of how it is. It's not my thing. And women's wrestling on the independents is mostly awful, and it's got nothing to do with style. Because I like Deonna Purrazzo, who is a technical wrestler who will work a body part. I like her. I like some of the hot-flying women's wrestlers, too. I like some of the spot monkey women wrestlers like Bianca Belair, because usually some of them have character and have personality. When you don't have character, you don't have personality, and you're just a mechanic, you're boring. If you're a high flyer, all you could do is hop all over the place, and you have no character, no personality, you're boring. I will say that Naomi needs to freshen up. She needs to do something different. But every time somebody, disses Naomi, it's not racial. It's not about her skin color and all this kind of stuff. Because why would they solo out Naomi and then say Bianca Belair is okay or Sasha Banks is okay? So I know some people will say, it's her skin color. It's colorism. Naomi's darker than all of them. That's come on. That's one of those grasping at straws responses where people get all tight-assed and they say, well, it's got to be because she's black, but it's not just because she's black, because other people are black too. It's because she's blacker than black. She's the blackest blackest. It's like, come on, get the fuck out of here. Bryan Alvarez is a fucking idiot. And a lot of people clone things that he says, but he's not entirely wrong. Naomi isn't very good, but most women aren't. Shayna Baszler included. And a lot of people love Shayna Baszler, but she's not very good either. She wrestles like she's in molasses sometimes. Sometimes she's very slow. But that might be her style. She likes the slower ground game. She's like the Greg the Hammer Valentine of the women's division at this point. I don't know if she's being told to do that or if that's just kind of how she prefers to work. But it's not very good. It's not very aesthetically pleasing. And when you don't have a lot of time, it doesn't really work. And I like Shayna Baszler. I like the aura. I like, when they do things with her and she works a body part and she stomps a limb or something like that, that really works. But when you put Shayna Baszler in some of these matches, man, she just comes across like Greg Valentine. And that's not really what we want in modern day. It can be fun. If we could get Shayna Baszler in there with Deonna Purrazzo, I think they would kill it. Give them 10 minutes. Yeah, kill it. 20, they might have one of the best matches you've ever seen. But for a television match with cold, where Shayna doesn't get to talk, she doesn't get to show any personality, and and plus people are allowed to have bad matches. Sometimes good people have bad matches, and that's just kind of how it is. But I don't think this is a big deal. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. Thank you guys, and I will talk to you guys later.